Is buying a used Volkswagen e-up the perfect way into affordable electric car ownership? In this video, I'm going to answer that question. I'm Daniel Acthouse and you're watching Daniel Drives. So you probably recognise this car, and you'd be right to, because this right here is Sparky the e-up, our electric car that we've had in the family for 3 years. And sadly, this car goes back to the leasing company in just a few weeks. So I thought now is the perfect time, another day where we've got sun shining, to review this car and give it a proper send-off here on the Daniel Drives YouTube channel. It's been an absolute pleasure, and it's not really featured much on YouTube, and I'm not really sure why. I did a video when we took delivery of the car back in 2022. It was very exciting. And then I did probably a couple of other videos where we took it to the Stamford Hall Volkswagen show in May 2022. And then I did a detailing video where I got sent some detailing products to give it a good clean. And since then, it's not been on the channel. You might have spotted it in the background of videos in the past, but we've not featured it, and I've barely spoken about it on social media. And I don't know why, because this is our first electric car, and we were so excited to take delivery of this car and see what EV ownership is all about. Well, 3 years in, I'm going to explain what it's been like, and to cut the story short, it's been nothing but a pleasure. So the first thing I've got to say really is, it's just a car. It's a very good car, but it's just a car. I mean, you look at it, and it's not got any bizarre styling characteristics or anything. It's simply just a car. And your general day-to-day person is not even going to recognise it's electric, apart from this green strip here on the registration plates. And when you're driving it as well, it's just like driving a small automatic Volkswagen up. There's no real clue, apart from the silence, that it's actually electric. So there's nothing scary about biting the bullet and getting one of these cars. If this is going to be your first electric car, then it's going to be a good one. I just think it looks really nice. It's a bit of a dishwasher. It's not particularly interesting. You can get them in a nice teal blue colour and some other colours as well, which I probably prefer. But we had a choice between black and white back when we spec'd it from the leasing company, and we went for white. And I think it's a nice car. It's had 3 years of being very dirty, but yesterday it was detailed, especially to go back to the leasing company and for me to do a video. It's nice, and I think the boxy shape adds a lot to the practicality, because inside it feels like a much bigger car. And this was our family car. We actually sold our 2010 Renault Scenic back in 2022 after 8 years. There's a video on the channel you can watch, and swapped it for this. And it was quite a gamble, because I'm 6'2", my brother's also tall, and my dad is 6'4". So we're quite a tall family, and it was always going to be a bit of a gamble, taking one of these cars into our lives. But it's not been a problem at all. It really does feel like a mini Golf, and that's definitely what Volkswagen intended when they made this car, because everything feels quality. Everything from the door shuts to the buttons inside, it gives you that sense and confidence that this is a car that's going to last going forwards. And it's a bit of a timeless design. The Up came out around 2012, and I've reviewed a Citigo, a 1 litre Citigo, which you can check out the review for as well. But it's a bit of a timeless design. I think when you make a boxy car with quite smooth lines, you're playing it safe really, and going forwards 15 years-ish since the Up was probably designed, it still looks relatively fresh. I love the wheels. These are alloy wheels, but they're aero-efficient wheels, and they're 15-inch Tesla alloy wheels. How many times can I say wheels in a sentence? And they look great. They're very easy to clean as well. They're a bit of a pain to inflate because the valve is, embedded into the rim. But they're nice wheels, and they've proven quite strong. It's got very narrow tyres. It's on Goodyear Efficient Grip tyres, electric car ready. And we've had to replace a couple of tyres due to punctures and little orbs and stuff that have come on the tyre. But yeah, tyres are, I wouldn't say they're relatively cheap. They are very thin, but they're not cheap because obviously they're electric car ready. But no, back to the design. I think Volkswagen did a very good job designing this car. Right, let's pop the bonnet. And it's always interesting with electric cars just to see what is under the bonnet. Is it storage, like a frunk, or is it something, useful to the car, like a motor? Well, obviously this car is front-wheel drive, so the motor is in the front, driving the front wheels. So if I pop the tiny bonnet, it really is tiny. There should be the little prong there that I can put into place. Quite dirty under here, actually. You can see the thing that powers the car. It moves it. It's quite simple. And when you own an electric car like this, you're very, very rarely going to have to open this bonnet because there's no maintenance needed whatsoever, apart from usual, I don't know, brake fluid and washer fluid and stuff like that. So I've brought out the Daniel Drives Book of Notes. It's the Grand Return, and that means we're going to get nerdy with some stats. So in the front, it's got a 61 kilowatt motor, as I said, powering the front wheels, and 61 kilowatts is roughly equivalent to 82 horsepower. Now, you might hear 82 horsepower and think it's going to be so sluggish. It's not. I think once you get past sort of 40, 50 mile an hour and you put your foot down, it is a little bit sluggish because the top speed is limited to 82 miles per hour. But when you're going around town, which is what this car is intended for, you know, 0 to 30 races at the traffic lights, it's pretty nippy. It really, really is. Take my word for it. In the floor, it's got a 36.8 kilowatt hour battery, but usable battery, 32.3 kilowatt hours. And that's to help with degradation and stuff like that. So 32 kilowatt hours, and that's going to give you a WLTP range of 159 miles. Now, the WLTP range figures, quite often, take them with a pinch of salt because they're not that trustworthy, really. But I can tell you that around town in the summertime, when you're not using your aircon or your heater or anything because it's got no heat pump, you're going to get nearly 200 miles of range. On the motorway, you probably expect 130 to 140, and in the winter, when you are using your heater and, you know, using more power, expect to get quite a bit less, but still enough to take you to work and back and around town and stuff. Now, a bit of a drawback with this car. I think the range is perfectly fine for the type of car it is. But I think the biggest drawback is probably the charging capabilities because obviously you can Type 2 charge it. Type 2 is the charger you have at home or just a standard charger really for modern electric cars. But you can fast charge it with CCS. It has got a CCS port, but it can only charge a maximum rate of 37 kilowatts, which isn't very fast at all. When you compare it to other cars of today, you know, 2025, you can get cars that are charging at 300 kilowatts, which is a lot faster. So we have very rarely public charge with this car. We did it when we went to Stamford Hall to the Volkswagen show, and I'd say kind of charging from 20 to 80% takes probably just over an hour, which is quite a long time. So if you're taking this on a longer journey, then just, you know, prepare to spend some time looking at the magazines in the service station because it's going to take a while. But as a town car, which this has been used for and taking my mum to and from work, it's been absolutely fine. And it costs something silly like £2 or £3 to charge overnight. Okay then, let's clamber aboard Sparky the E-Up. It's a lovely little cabin in here, and the way to describe it is it's refreshingly Volkswagen, as it's probably going to beep at me. No, it's not. That's nice. A lot of modern cars do like to beep at you and turn the ignition on. Not very camera friendly. But no, it's refreshingly VW in here, and I mean that in the highest of regards. Everything feels quality, it feels solid, and when you're driving it, it's super smooth. There's no rattles or anything to annoy you. It's unusual in here because it's half modern and quite digital, but it's also half kind of retro with a lot of analog dials in front of you, a massive speedo. And what's really weird actually is your state of charge meter is also analog, like an old-fashioned petrol gauge, which is really unusual, obviously carried over from the normal ops. You've got a little digital display in front of you, which shows you average speed, total distance, your miles per kilowatt hour, and we're averaging 4.8 miles per kilowatt hour, which is pretty good. In front of you here, you've got your little screen, only a little dinky screen, nothing to distract you too much. It's got FM radio, DAB radio, it's got Bluetooth connectivity so you can, you know, use your phone. And it's got a little reversing camera as well, so if I knock it into reverse, a little nice gear selector, which is shared with like the Golf and other Volkswagens, feels nice in your hand. Little reversing camera, it's got parking sensors as well at the rear. But what I will say is the reversing camera, don't get too excited about it because it's so small, it's actually kind of useless. But yeah, you can go through your regen here on the gear selector as well. You've got Eco Plus button, feels nice. Digital climate control as well, that's quite fancy. I think that's only on the higher spec models. Heated seats, which is lovely to have. I've recently bought a Z4 which has heated seats and it's a game changer, so nice. It's got heated windscreen as well, so, you know, Ford owners laugh because other cars have got it now as well, stealing all the fun. But yeah, that's also really good to have in the winter because you're not there scraping for, you know, 10 hours before you go to work. It's really nice. And you can actually go into the WeConnect app, which is Volkswagen's bespoke app, and set the car to preheat or pre-air condition before you get into it in the morning, which I know my mum has really enjoyed, taking this car to work in the mornings. But yeah, it's weird because it's half modern, half kind of retro. You've still got a manual handbrake, which means you can do little electric handbrake turns, not advised for legal reasons. But yeah, it feels pretty good in here, to be honest. Very solid, very refreshingly VW. The boot space isn't too bad either. It's not particularly long, the boot space, but it's very deep, obviously because there's no fuel tank. So I've got my coat and various pieces of camera gear in here for reference, and no, it's pretty good. You can get a false floor, which is very useful. So in my case, it would just hide all of my rubbish at the bottom of the boot, and then you can have actual useful stuff on top. But the rear seats fold flat and means you can do various tip runs and stuff, which we have done. Right then, let's take this car for a spin. There we go. Off we go. Absolute silence. Right then, out on the roads. This is the first time I've driven this car properly on the road after 3 years, because finally can get temporary insurance, for an affordable price. When we got this car, I wasn't even driving on the roads, which makes it even crazier. But it's so easy to drive, and I'm not going to talk about the performance and the handling necessarily. I might mention it because, that's what I'm into. I love driving. But mostly this car is going to be, driven around town, and yeah, for that, it does the job very, very well indeed, because it's so smooth. The skinny tyres, you do get a little bit of road noise at higher speeds, especially on motorways and stuff, but again, not what this car was intended for. The idea of the skinny tyres is that it's low drag, it's more efficient, and yeah, you can't argue when it comes to efficiency with this car because it's very efficient. But yeah, it's just very easy to drive. The lane assist is very annoying. That gets turned off straight away because it's constantly pulling you in and out of lane, almost like a really annoying passenger tugging at your steering wheel. Sounds a bit like me, actually. I'm a very annoying passenger. But no, it's very easy. You just knock it in drive, knock it in D, and off you go. It's just like driving a go-kart. But yeah, it literally is. It's just super simple. You've got 4 levels of regen. You can knock it back into D, and then you can move your gear selector to the side. You've got level 1, level 2, level 3, and then you can knock it back into B, which is your brake mode, and that's level 4. Level 4 being the harshest amount of regenerative braking. And if you don't know what regen is, basically when you lift off the throttle, it's actually engine braking in a sense, and the regen-o-meter is recording the regen for me, and it's feeding energy back into the battery using the motor. It's a very clever system, and it means that if you live in a very, hilly place in the country or in the world, you'll be using more electricity going up the hills, but it means you can hopefully recoup some going down the hills. In terms of driver aids, it's got your cruise control and your speed limiter, which is nice to have, and it's also quite safe in the way it's got your automatic braking. So if a pedestrian steps out in front of you, or a car pulls out in front of you, or maybe you're not very awake, you shouldn't be driving if you're not awake, but maybe you're a bit sleepy and you're about to rear end somebody, the car in theory should slam on the brakes for you. So yeah, that's all going to help the NCAP rating. But yeah, I've got narrow lanes. This is when it's good to be in a narrow car like an Op. Something that really surprised me from day one when we took delivery of this car was the suspension, because you'd think for a small car it'd be crashy, it'd be horrible, but no, genuinely, again, it just feels like a little Golf. And I'll say that a lot because that's what I'd liken it to. It's just like a little Golf, because suspension is actually pretty soft. Obviously this is me sitting in the front. I'm sure in the back it's a little bit more rough and ready to save costs. But no, in the front it drives really well. It's not like great at handling. It's very rolly when you give it some steering input. So yeah, it's not a track weapon, not what this car's for. But no, just driving around, and I'm on quite a bumpy road right now with some potholes and stuff. And yeah, it absorbs the bumps really well. And the seats are relatively comfy as well. They're only very simple fabric cloth seats, but they're pretty good. Okay then, bit of a 0-60 test, let's go. There you go. The initial acceleration is pretty good. But I've got plenty of time to talk to you until we get to 60, because it does it in 12.4 seconds recorded. 60, there we go. There's national speed limits. It does take its time, and that's due to the 82 horsepower that this car has. But again, not what this car is intended for. So I'm not going to, review it harshly saying it needs more power, because if you want more power, there's plenty of other cars out there. This purely serves as an economical, cheap to run, good for the planet little runabout, and it does that very well. I am a big Volkswagen fan. I always have been all of my life, and I think that's partly due to growing up watching Herbie. I absolutely loved Herbie, the alive Beetle, and we actually had a Beetle, and my parents bought it pretty much because of me, because I love Beetles so much. So Volkswagen's always been very close to my heart. I've actually got a Volkswagen t-shirt on right now, and quite often you'll see me wearing a Volkswagen t-shirt because I'm a bit of a style icon, as you can tell. But yeah, I'm quite passionate about Volkswagen as a brand, and I do think in recent years they have taken a bit of a tumble. They are redeeming themselves now with updates and stuff, but the Mark 8 Golf wasn't very good. The whole ID range wasn't very good, to be honest. They're getting better, but when the ID3 came out, that was meant to be huge, like the new generation people's car, which is obviously what Volkswagen means. But yeah, it was a bit of a disappointment really, and they went down the whole haptic button route, and the touchscreens were all quite laggy. And this car, and also the e-Golf, which is very similar to this, represents Volkswagen at its best, which is user-friendly automotive transport. You've actually got real-life buttons to control your volume and stuff like that, and everything operates smoothly. There's no lag, no systems are crashing. This is Volkswagen to me, and it's good to see them kind of recognizing that and going back to using the proper buttons, and yeah, it's refreshing to see. Steering is lovely and light, it really is. Obviously electronic power steering, as with everything these days, but it's so relaxing in a weird way. And my dad doesn't necessarily enjoy driving anymore. He's got the little Twingo, and he will always opt to drive this if my mum's not in it, because it's just so simple. It's just, as I said, knock it into drive and off you go. And it's so quiet. And it's a nice cabin as well. It's nicely insulated, it's not too noisy. You've got no vibrations from an engine, obviously. The sound system's also pretty decent. You've got little tweeter speakers up on the A-pillar, speakers on the door, you've got speakers in the back. So yeah, for a standard system, it's not too bad. So the Up itself has been around for a long time now, and Volkswagen actually developed the Up to be a car that could be an electric car, which is why this works so well. And yeah, you can actually get very early Volkswagen e-Ups from like 2013 time, and they've got smaller batteries, I think around 18 kilowatt hour, so obviously you get less range, but you can get those super cheap now. But even these later e-Ups with the bigger battery, the 32 usable kilowatt hour battery, and obviously more tech inside, facelift, blah blah blah, when they came out new, they started from just over £20,000. An old Dodge van. Started at just over £20,000, which was very affordable for an electric car, especially one that feels this kind of supreme, really. Feels like a Volkswagen. This obviously is a higher spec model. It's got your comfort pack or whatever it's called. It's got your heated seats, parking sensors. But even still, this new would have been around £24,000–25,000. But we obviously had this on a lease, and a very cheap lease deal. And we actually found the deal because Richard Porter of obviously Top Gear, Smith & Sniff fame, he started leasing an e-Up for his wife, and he was talking about the lease deal he found on the Smith & Sniff podcast, and I sent him a message and just said, can you send me a link to the deal? And we actually got one, we got one of these cars on the same deal. So thanks Richard Porter, if you're watching. But yeah, it's a very good car. And when you look in today's market on Auto Trader and eBay and all the other car sales sites, you can get these so cheap now, like so cheap. It's a lot of car for the money. You can get early examples of the newer facelift, tech lift e-Ups, sort of around 2021, 2022 time, like this one, for anywhere from £10,000 now, or more like 12,000 for a good one, low mile one. And that's unbelievable, because when you compare that to the new electric cars on sale, That's comparable to the likes of the Dacia Spring, which has recently come out, which is actually just a little bit more money than a used one of these. But this is a lot more car. It's not going to feel as tinny as a Dacia Spring, and it's going to be more comfortable. It's going to be quicker because the Spring only has about 65 horsepower, I think, and that's the faster model. This just seems a lot more car for the money. It's safer as well. It's got more tech, and I just think it's a no-brainer. It almost seems too cheap in a way. So if you are in the market for a used electric car in 2025, then really I can only recommend one of these cars, because I can speak for ourselves. It's served us very well as a family. It's been used and abused to and from football matches and taking my mum to work down dark, dirty lanes, and it's been great. It's been really, really good. There's been a couple of things annoying us, like the climate control resetting to 22 and the lane assist, but that's to be expected from modern cars, and as modern cars go, I think I'd have this one. It can actually be really fun when you want it to be, because it's quite stripped back and it gives you that old school feel of motoring. It feels really quite zippy, especially off the line. You've got that instant torque, which is so nice about an electric car. It's small, it's quite chuckable in a way, and I quite like the roly-poly nature of this car as well. It's weirdly quite fun, I don't know. So there we are then, a car I rate very, very highly indeed. The Volkswagen e-up. It has to be one of the best affordable electric cars money can buy today in 2025. It just makes so much sense as a used bargain. And Volkswagen sadly don't make these cars new anymore, so it's got to be a used bargain. But I can't recommend them enough, to be honest. If it suits your needs, it's going to suit them well, trust me, because it's suited our needs very, very well. And it's going to be a shame to see it go. It really, really is, because it's been such a good car, but it means new things are coming, and that's very exciting. And you're going to see that this year on the Daniel Jones YouTube channel. I'll give you a clue. It's going to be electric, and it's probably going to be French. And it's not what you're thinking, but yeah, you'll have to wait and see for that. But yeah, this car is really, really good. And I hope whoever has it next is going to enjoy it as much as we have. And it's going to be as impressed as we have been as well, because yeah, it's been really, really good. If you've enjoyed this video, then do remember to subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to Daniel Drives. I'd really appreciate the support, and maybe leave a comment down below. Maybe you own one of these cars, maybe you're about to buy one. Let me know your thoughts, I'd love to know. And you can follow me on social media at DanielCars05. But for now, all that's left to say is farewell, Sparky. So then, here it is, our new Volkswagen e-up, also known to us as Sparky. That's the name we've gone for, as voted by loads of people on Instagram and Twitter. Sparky the e-up, here it is, and it's looking amazing.